The Golden Boot Pod is proud to announce that merchandise is now available. We have everything from t-shirts and hoodies, to hats and beanies, to drinkware, to wearables and blankets. You can find it all under the merchandise tab at thegoldenboot.podbean.com or go directly to thegoldenboot.com. As always, thank you for supporting the Golden Boot Pod.
The views and opinions expressed in the Golden Boot podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Golden Boot podcast as a whole.
Hey, I'm glad I was on mute because I said the wrong thing anyway. Welcome back to another edition of HBCU Hour. It's your boy Pooh Bell. I got my man Aunt Petty Murphy in the building. We got Daniel D. Williams in the building. We have Chris be joining us shortly, but we do have a special guest back with us again from Huntsville, sports director of Fox 54, Mr. Mo Carter. Welcome back to the Golden Boot. Well, I'm sorry. Welcome back to HBCU Hour, actually. Mo, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys. Hope all is well back home in the boot. Hopefully, I look forward to making a trip back home to the boot in about a month's time now. We'll be getting close to that Bayou Classic.
All right. That is coming up. Classic time period is coming up. It is what is Magic City's coming up? You got not a classic.
I already had the State Fair Classic.
Already had State Fair. Gulf Coast Challenge with Alabama A&M and Jackson State in Mobile's coming up.
Right. Florida Classic is going to be coming up. The week before Thanksgiving. Then obviously Bayou Classic, Jackson State against Alcorn State. Man, like it's about to get real in these next 7 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, and speaking of that, homecoming for a lot of schools it started happening. Last week was homecoming for Alabama A&M. There was another homecoming that I'm missing. I know Alabama State's is this weekend, which it's an interesting matchup.
Very much so.
We're gonna talk about that one. But let's go ahead. Let's start off and take a look back at last week in the SWAC and the MEAC, and just kind of touch on a few games. Hold on, give me 1 second to bring this up. All right, so last week, Alabama A&M took on Bethune-Cookman, got their first SWAC win of the season. You had FAMU taking on Mississippi Valley and beating them. Alabama State
Big win.
with a big win, late comeback, big fourth quarter, beating Texas Southern. Coach Dooley, you know what I'm saying, with the ascot and all, put a whipping on Arkansas Pine Bluff. And then Prairie View took Grambling or Rambling? Maybe?
Rambling. Yeah, Rambling.
Rambling behind the shed.
The G is solid.
took them behind the shed. Don't say nothing. I want you to be safe at home. I know them your people.
I ain't worried. They need to be worried about winning games, not what people saying.
Yeah. Right. Now in the MEAC, South Carolina State actually took on South Carolina. That game was moved because of Hurricane Ian to that Thursday. Morgan State beat Virginia Lynchburg. Campbell beat North Carolina Central. Yale beat Howard. Sacred Heart beat Norfolk State, and Delaware State eked out a win against Robert Morris. Now, SIAC, I don't have those scores, but SIAC, there was some big matchups. Benedict is moving.
And then Lane beat Tennessee State.
Yeah,
we're gonna get to that
right there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's going this upcoming week, we mentioned a little bit about what's going on at Alabama State. But let's look at this. Rambling. I'm sorry, however you want to do it. It's coming. It's coming to Louis Cruz Stadium in Huntsville to take on Alabama A&M. It's actually a MEAC SWAC game here with Florida A&M taking on South Carolina State. This is I guess a old MEAC game, technically, if you want to look at it that way. Jackson State, Deion's return to Montgomery, Alabama. And for those of you who don't know, the last time Deion played at in Montgomery, and that was his first season, and Alabama State beat them. They if you look, this is a real scoreboard. That's what Alabama State did. They put his picture from his draft day up there. That is real. He was not happy. Let's just say he was not happy. Texas Southern is going to take on Arkansas and Pine Bluff. Southern is taking on Prairie View, which Prairie View is
that's Dooley facing his old team again.
Yeah, but Prairie View has been looking really good this year. Bethune-Cookman is taking on Tennessee State, and Alcorn is taking on Mississippi Valley State. So MEAC doesn't have many games. They have like Norfolk State, Morgan State, and then the one we already mentioned, the FAMU South Carolina State game. So, yeah. Let's start here because we keep, and I know some people know when we're joking about we joking about the Grambling taking the and saying rambling. It's a lot going on at Grambling. We talked about it. This was your altar call on the Golden Boot. Coach Hugh Jackson taking the G off the helmets. And let me ask you this, Ant. That's your neck of the woods. How has that been received?
Well, I don't know anybody who's backing his decision to take the G off the helmets. I got a lot of a lot of buddies that's former players at Grambling. I got some family that played at Grambling, and none of them are happy with it. They're actually upset at Hugh would. They almost look at it as like a backhand disrespectful to the legacy of Grambling to do something like that. So Graham fam ain't too happy with Hugh right now. He got to start winning games.
Let me ask you a question. So, if the team isn't performing to the way that Coach Hugh thinks they should perform, they're not playing the type of football he wants. Just hypothetical, just asking. You know,
I ain't saying that.
I got you. Does he have? I mean,
no, he doesn't have that right. No, bro, no. What has Hugh Jackson done to earn his G in Grambling?
I mean, he's the head football coach of the school.
I don't care. All those players are scholarship athletes to that school. So if they ain't earned their G, how has he earned his G?
I agree.
They've been there longer than him.
That's true.
They've done more for that program than he has at this point.
That's true. But I mean, is it not? I mean, what's that?
At what point as a coaching staff do you look at yourself and say, are we doing our job?
Well, how do you motivate these kids now?
Taking the G off the helmet ain't gonna motivate them.
So I'm gonna say this: Arkansas, Chad Morris, he did something similar. He was like, "You're not gonna wear Arkansas apparel. You're gonna wear like white sweatshirts or something."
He did some drumline stuff.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, you gonna, you crabs, y'all crabs. You're gonna earn the Arkansas A.
They're bootleggers.
He was gone. How long after that?
They literally went 0 for.
And he was fired within 2 years, right?
Yeah, that was North Texas was under Chad Morris. That was that same year.
They lost to Colorado State under Chad Morris. That's also so. I mean,
So,
when you're a coaching staff and you revert to these kind of tactics, that lets me know you're not doing your job motivating your players. So you gotta try to do stuff like this to get to them.
And this is kind of like an old school way of doing things too. I mean, no college program really does this, but I see where he's coming from. You know what I'm saying? He wants them to play, you know, up their game, up their level. I get it. But hopefully, I mean, hopefully it works. I don't think
it's not so far.
How many letters can you take off? Hold on, I'm gonna get to some of these comments because Tori Williams. Oh well, let me first start like this. Tori comments and says, "Go Jags," and then he says, "As they continue to lose, what then?"
Exactly. Well, you go at sooner or later you're gonna be at the other end of the G.
It's gonna take all the letters.
He's gonna be playing the opposite of horse.
Yeah.
No, you actually make a good point of that, and you make a good point too about taking away, the particular letters, because at some point in time, they may get down to the N and the G at the end of the season.
And
they keep
the G
losing.
still gonna be there, exactly. So I mean, I just feel like as a coach, when you start reverting to stuff like that, then you've lost the locker room to a sense. And that's not the only thing. I mean, like there's other stuff that's going on, Graham. Like, they don't look good as a football team.
Right.
They just don't. And so I don't know how much of that you could put on the players. You know what I mean? Like whenever, I ain't gonna get into all that, but it's just
I want to go here. Okay.
Go ahead, Pooh. Go ahead. Pooh.
Okay, so I feel like we've as much as we've talked about Dion and Jackson State, we talked about Grambling this offseason on the opposite scale for the wrong reasons. The things that happened with the AD, with the volleyball team,
nothing has
Art
been positive.
Browse.
Nothing has been positive.
It's yeah. Now I do want to say, and I know we kind of briefly talked about it. Grambling's volleyball team is undefeated right now.
Did see that
in the SWAC. They're undefeated in the SWAC right now.
Yep, correct.
They haven't even lost a set.
Correct.
I'm gonna leave that there. I'm not saying
leave it on a positive note.
I'm gonna leave it there. And I guess
last time I was on, we were talking about that, and it was like the week after all that mess that went down, and it removed the previous coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I say this though. I think Grambling has a little bit of buyer's remorse. Well, maybe not the people who make the decisions at Grambling, but the fan base does.
It's 5 games into the season.
It doesn't matter, bro. Broderick Fobbs did not deserve to be fired. And look what you have right now. Like we just said, everything since Hugh has been hired has been negative publicity, and you aren't winning football games. You had a coach that won the Celebration Bowl, won the SWAC several times, and you got rid of him because he had one average kind of mediocre year, and so the AD could put his guy in place, and now look at what's happening.
Actually, the only SWAC coach to win the Celebration Bowl.
Exactly.
I just want to throw that in.
Look, piggybacking off of that, man. I mean, obviously, I was at Southern University and Coach Richardson's last few years. I was the senior class of his second to last squad. Then the next year they went 7-5 or 6-5, something like that. Still had a winning season, but not what was expected of it. And all of a sudden, they decided to get rid of Coach Richardson in favor of Stump Mitchell. He came in, he talked all this or whatever, and then all of a sudden you went from decent success to literally no success. I think he was like 2-9 his first year. I think the next year he won like 4 games, and then after losing Mississippi Valley 3 games into that third year on national television, he was out the door. So I've seen this situation happen. Obviously, I've seen people also talk about what Hugh Jackson saying, give him a little bit more time. Even Coach Sanders even said, give that man more time or whatever. But I kind of look in between the lines and like, I see why you're saying give him some more time.
It's like Nick Saban saying he's mad Les Miles got fired.
And I feel too, you do have to give him some time, but at the same time, I understand it's his first year, but I'm not seeing progress. I'm not seeing this team improve week in and week out. I'm not seeing where they're getting better. And so it's hard when you know what you just had in the coaching and the staff. It's hard to say, okay, well, he's going to figure this out when nothing has looked like it's getting figured out on a week-to-week basis.
Chris English talks about JC at John Curtis said Curtis told us that as well. Said we we get the white helmets until we earn that JC. That's but see, that's high school. I can get that in high school.
Well, then he also said it's summer camp. You know what I mean? Like
summer camp. Yep. Yeah, I'm very familiar with a lot of teams that do that during summer camp or whatever. I can even go as far as like remember in high school where, you know, we didn't even have the decals on the helmet. Instead, like they would put the tape with your name on it or whatever and stuff. And once they knew your name, they'd take the tape off. Yeah. But, you know, you'd have some guys literally like into the jamboree in week one that still had the tape on their helmet because they hadn't earned the right to get it taken off, even though they had the decal on it. So I've seen that before, but nothing on a collegiate level like that.
I mean, honestly, even on the college level, I mean, you got freshmen that come in, you know what I'm saying? They put their name on the list for dress day. And I mean, it's a wide receiver and his number is 46. You know what I'm saying? You don't get that credit until
but that's a lot different than taking the head G off everybody.
No, I get it, but at the same time, I mean, it's his first year. You know what I'm saying? Let the guy. I say give him some time, man. Like,
so if it's his first year, then why take the G off the helmet?
I get it. I mean, you got to earn it. You playing bad football. You're not representing the school. You're not representing the community. You need to earn it. Maybe he's seeing something in practice that we're not seeing.
So does he don't have to earn his though? Just them,
bro. He's the head coach,
and
still
it's his responsibility.
Lead by example, right? Lead by example, right?
It's his responsibility to make sure.
Lead by example, right?
Yeah. What you want?
And you want him to just wear a black polo on the sideline?
I mean, if they haven't earned the right, if they haven't earned the right to wear the G, and you are their leader, what gives you the right to earn the G? Then obviously you're not doing something to if they're not living up to their expectations. Also,
hey, this is my ship. I run this ship.
And you're supposed to go down with your ship. You go down with your ship. You don't hop off the ship when there's something go wrong. You go down with the ship.
But he ain't quit. He's just expecting. He's expecting more out of his guys. He's challenging them.
But he's not expecting more out of himself, though, right?
Hey, man, look. Sometimes
because he's not holding himself to the same level standard he's holding his players to.
I mean, so what do you expect him to do? Man?
The same thing he did to his players. If you strip their G, strip your G.
But it probably don't mean as much to him as it would mean to the players.
That's the problem.
And it probably doesn't affect him.
That's a problem.
I need to reach them some kind of way. So look, that's what I'm gonna
do. Do it to yourself too.
But hold on. Sometimes parents think that, oh, okay, I'm embarrassing. I'm gonna embarrass my kid, and that's gonna make him act right.
Hold on, look.
Probably his approach.
I gotta address this. Hey, Jordan. No, Chris didn't get bumped for our guest. Chris has to. He works late so through the week. So. Yeah. That's why Chris will be coming in, and Chris has his spot.
So,
hey, but fellas, I want to ask y'all this. Obviously, Grambling is going to be here this upcoming weekend in Huntsville, taking on Alabama A&M, which I still think is more of a toss-up game or whatever. But if they lose that, I'm looking at the schedule now. They've got a home game against FAMU. Then they've got another game against Alcorn. I mean, God, it's not getting easier for Hugh Jackson and company to where I can't even see the G coming back on the helmet if they're talking about improved play if they don't get a W this week.
What, hope and prayer for the Bayou Classic at that time?
They ain't winning that.
Nah.
I'm just so I guess
they might beat UAPB, maybe.
Yeah,
Southern wrong.
But no, Southern beat them without Skylar Perry. I
was about to say that it depends on if Skylar Perry is back or not.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's a totally different team without Skylar Perry. So I can't look too much into that Southern game.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of goes into biggest surprises and disappointments thus far in this season.
Prairie View is the biggest surprise for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to agree with Ann on that one. They're more of the big surprise with me just because, obviously, I know Coach Dooley very, very well. I know what kind of coach he is. I know what kind of program he had, but he did loot well. Prairie View lost some guys after Coach Dooley and some of the staff left. So to see that Prairie View is literally in the position that they are is a huge surprise, in my opinion. And here's the other thing, too. I mean, you look at, like, Prairie View in general. I mean, these guys are looking not only great, but they've actually had some very, very good out-of-conference games and matchups. I mean, let me go back. Who did they play? They were kind of neck and neck with God, I can't think of the team they played or whatever. But then I was watching another game where they should have won that game in the end. Abilene Christian. They should have won that game. they should have won that game, quite frankly. It came down to like just some late miscues in like the late part of the second half. And then Incarnate Word, I mean, they're one of the top FCS programs right now in general. So, they held their own for the most part. Prairie View is playing solid, especially under Coach Bubba being his first time as a head coach. But he's just one of those savvy veterans, got an NFL experience, who knows how to make his team go. And, they win some ball games. Now, obviously, huge game this upcoming weekend that we'll probably talk about a little later on. But I definitely got to say Prairie View was probably the biggest surprise as far as like where they stand at. And the other thing I would say would be more like, I don't want to say as much as a surprise, but I was a little shocked at like the margins of victories that Jackson State has had this year against some of their opponents.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. The Abilene Christian, I think when G from Swacking the Food was on, he talked about that. No, I'm sorry, that was Alcorn who's missing the punter.
Yeah. And then when they played Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was that one.
I'll say for me, disappointment. I'll keep it close. We just talked about him, rambling. Honestly, I mean, Coach Hugh coming in. I'm just saying, Coach Hugh coming in, and I mean with Dion, with Jackson State, you thinking, this is NFL pedigree coach. He's bringing a lot of coaches, from other different schools that have performed pretty well. I mean, if anything, you would at least expect the offense to perform really good. But, I mean, they're averaging 21 points a game. The quarterback is not playing too hot. And they just don't
How many points they averaging if you take the Northwestern State game out?
I have no clue.
Nah, they not doing well.
Exactly.
Offense, that's something, that's something we noticed.
They're not doing well. Yeah.
Exactly. And
we noticed that during the spring game.
That's why when I watched the spring game, they didn't have a quarterback. The offense couldn't really move the ball, and I was worried about that. And I figured they was gonna finish last or second, down toward the bottom of the West. Biggest disappointment for me is got to be Alabama A&M.
Yeah,
that's mine.
I really thought that they was gonna challenge in the East. I didn't pick them to win the East, but I thought that they would, beat.
Somebody said they would.
Yeah, and I figured they would be
fool.
Hey, my pick in the East don't look much better, but but I think that I thought that they would be up there high, especially with the transfers that they got in. But I know they had a lot of injuries, but still, I just felt like they would be more than just a one-win team at this point.
I can agree with you on that. Of course, I see them every single day, to be honest with you. I mean, I go back and I kind of look at it like this. When you go back to the spring, obviously, the quarterback situation was a big thing everybody was looking at. And Malik Williams, the Miami transfer, appeared to be the guy until he decided to step away from football in the offseason. So all of a sudden, you're down to Xavier Langford and you're also down to Quincy Casey. Both guys bring a different set of game skills to the offense or whatever. And basically both guys had their chances. Unfortunately, I can't really say one has been able to accelerate away from the other until recently. And Coach Maynard's now looking at it like, okay, which one of these guys won't lose the game as much as the other would or whatever. And you saw the consistency this past week. Really, you saw it against FAMU as well. They just made some silly mistakes in the second half to kind of get FAMU back in that game, and that's how they got the victory. But this past week against Bethune-Cookman, they took a lot of pressure off of Langford. They're like, let's just run the ball. And that's exactly what they did. They ended up giving the ball to Donovan Eaglin. He had almost 200 yards on the ground, Michigan State transfer, and he won like several HBCU offensive players of the week. And quite frankly, I think it was the first time probably since Jordan Bentley has been in, I've seen them commit to the run like they did. And who knows, that might be what may be successful for them moving forward. You just have to kind of just see it from week to week. But no, I definitely can agree with you guys with the losses they ended up having, the way they lost. I would say thought there would have been some better losses. Let me say it like that in general. But season is, quote unquote, still young, according to Coach Maynard, which technically is right. But at the same time, if they got a win last week, got to find a way to get another win to kind of keep things going or whatever, because eventually, depending on what happens down there in Montgomery this week or whatever, you got Alabama State and Jackson State like in 2 out of 3 weeks in the next 5 weeks for A&M.
Yeah. My biggest surprise, the other team out of Alabama State. Their 2 losses are UCLA and Prairie View. That's it. I mean, season's still young. They got Jackson State this week. I don't expect them to win, but if they're even competitive, that'll be big for them. I think they have a chance to not necessarily win out, but they got a chance to make some noise this year in the first year under Coach Eddie Robinson Jr. No relation, but it's. I think they got a chance. My biggest disappointment so far has been Bethune-Cookman. I necessarily didn't think that they would make a lot of noise, but I thought he was gonna make just come out and just do some things, and but then again, it's a lot of players who it seems like they were, or I was expecting to make a lot of a big noise and didn't. I.e., Gary Quarles, Ibrahim.
Yeah, both guys have been injured up here.
Yeah. What's the other guy? Davis at Alabama State. It's been so I know he came out, went out with an injury. And I hadn't seen whether he's been in or out. Skylar Perry.
Travis Hunter, you know what I mean? He's been injured, but Skylar Perry been balling when he was healthy.
Right.
You know who really impressed me the most is Body from Texas Southern.
Yes.
That he got to be the second best quarterback in SWAC at this point.
Did he? Swag and Fool said Quarles hit the portal. I hadn't heard that.
I haven't got official confirmation on that.
Well, he must have just left the team because I don't think you can technically enter the portal.
Yeah, I haven't got official confirmation on that. I know he was at practice last week and decided not to dress because he was injured, and that's all the information that was provided to us.
Yeah. All right. Somebody who has also been impressive, D tackle from Southern, Jason Dumas. He was defensive line player of the week for the SWAC?
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Just coming off of that injury. First game back, he did really well this past weekend.
Yeah, so he
honestly, he said his favorite player is Aaron Donald in his game. Of course, you guys know I love the D line. His game does remind me a lot of that short, compact, explosive. Hopefully he gets his shot at the next level. So.
Oh yeah, I think he will for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another player who's been making
see Dumas was at Prairie View, right?
Yeah,
he was one who came with See, that's kind of what Mo was talking about. When you have players like that lead Prairie View along with the coach, and you still balling like that just makes what they're doing over there even more impressive. But go ahead, Pooh, my bad.
No, I was going to say somebody who they were off last week, but he's been getting a lot of buzz for a end of season award. Shadua Sanders. We talked about this on the Golden Boot as well. A lot of people are pushing for him to be a Heisman candidate.
The boy need to worry about winning the Walter Payton Award first.
I think he can do that.
I think he can too, but
I think he has a better shot. But
that needs to be what his eyes are set on, and not the Heisman. Because I mean, once again, he's gonna have to put up better numbers than Steve McNair to even get considered for the Heisman.
He doesn't have better numbers than Lindsey Scott right now. That's what we were talking about, right? From Incarnate Word.
That's what I'm saying. He got tough competition for the Walter Payton Award.
Another thing about
Fordham's another guy too. He's putting up a lot of numbers.
Another problem with this, Jackson State didn't play any
competition.
I'm gonna say mainstream teams. I guess you could say teams who have more eyes on them.
Do they play a ranked team in the FCS polls?
No,
I don't think so.
Exactly my point.
No FBS competition. Yeah. But so
and no disrespect to the kid. I mean, he has great numbers, but I mean, just looking at the numbers, whenever you're talking about FCS, Michael Penix for Washington right now, he has 1,700 yards, passing yards. Shadua has 1,300. So I mean, to even be considered, I mean, he's gonna have to go above and beyond.
Yeah, especially with the level of competition. If they were playing Montana, if they were playing North Dakota State, You know what I mean? If they were playing some of these, ranked, if they were playing Stephen F. Austin, Cornerware in some of these schools, then yeah, you could kind of have more of an argument. But the fact that they're doing it just basically against the SWAC and other HBCUs that aren't in the SWAC, like Tennessee State, I don't know how much respect he's gonna get across the nation.
Right.
What up, Chuck? That's my boy. What's happening, bro?
Right.
He said there's a lot of politics with the Heisman Trophy.
That's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but you still have to perform.
That's gonna be some of the politics right there. Is his level of competition that he plays against and stuff like that.
Now Dane, you said how many yards behind Phoenix?
Like 400.
400. Well, he might get that this week. They playing Alabama State. This is a get back game for Deion. They beat them last year, but the year prior, like I said, the last time they were in Montgomery, Alabama State's first year.
Then they scheduled up for homecoming.
They scheduled for homecoming.
I want to talk about this. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, we about to get.
I got a little explanation for you with that too. So sure.
So Deion, because Daniel, you brought this topic up. Deion said it's a money game. When we hear money game, we think you brought in a lower level competition team to basically refine your skills, beat up on, and you just paid them a lot of money. I.e.,
you get the easy W.
I.e., Miami paying 1.5 to Middle Tennessee State, and in the words of Blake, getting them cheeks clapped, or Texas A&M paying 1.5 to Appalachian State and then getting beat. But this is homecoming.
Right.
The game is sold out.
I'll say this though. My thought. Okay. I feel like if it's a little bit of, I can see two sides to this. I can see one, Deion saying it's a money game because they want the stadium full, and Jackson State is gonna bring a full stadium. But at the same time, Alabama State's looking at like our homecoming was gonna be packed anyway because it's homecoming.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So honestly, you could say that they cost themselves a money game by making this, because you could have had a big crowd for two different games, and you bringing that one crowd to one game. So I don't know.
So here's the thing about that, and Mo, I'll let you explain. I know you said you had Alabama State. A lot of people don't. Alabama State's homecoming actually used to be on Thanksgiving Day for years. For years, Turkey Day Classic was homecoming. So them having a separate homecoming from Turkey Day is like it's like, I mean, what, last 10 years recent? Am I right in that, Mo? Is that? I think that's
actually the whole homecoming thing is like maybe 2-3 years old now.
Yeah.
So now the complaints have been going on for years, primarily because Turkey Day Classic, big game or whatever. They used to play Tuskegee all those years and didn't play them for a number of years. The main complaint was that students didn't get a chance to enjoy homecoming in general. They literally made homecoming more so for the alumni than what it was for the students. So finally, with this new administration, with Dr. Ross and them, they're like, we've got to give the students an opportunity to enjoy themselves from a homecoming standpoint. That's why they looked at their schedule. Like, okay, we usually have a Labor Day game or whatever, which they played Tuskegee a couple of times, and let's see, they played Miles this past year, and then they're like Magic City Classic. So between those two, you've got to find a place to have a good home game that's going to draw, a pretty decent crowd for your homecoming. And this year just so happened to be Jackson State. And the other thing you have to think about too, it's not just an impact in Alabama State. Alabama A&M kind of does the same thing. Alabama A&M's homecoming is usually either last week of September or first week of October, because for like Alabama A&M, many people don't know, like, yes, the school is in Huntsville, Alabama, but some of their larger alumni bases aren't in Huntsville. They're in Birmingham. They're in Atlanta. So you got to spread this thing out or whatever to where people can kind of get their money's worth or whatever. So that's why their homecoming is usually either last week of September or first week of October, which still gives you about 3-4 weeks to prep for Magic City Classic when you go down to Birmingham. So it's been more of a strategic thing from a calendar standpoint, not just because, we just picked this day and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Because looking at Alabama State's schedule, basically it was either this week against against Jackson State or next week against Mississippi Valley. But if you're done it next week against Mississippi Valley, all you're doing is giving your fans that game, a bye week, and then Magic City Classic. So, I mean, and let's be for real. Money doesn't stretch for a lot of people. So you have to also understand, that situation when you're coming from that standpoint. As a matter of fact, Rob J from Jackson State, the play-by-play voice guy or whatever, he actually asked Coach Eddie Robinson about that, and Coach Robinson really kind of explained it, through and through, because even Eddie was like, I remember when I was a player, and we were kind of like, yeah, a lot of people not staying around, especially from a student standpoint for Turkey Day or whatever, because they're trying to go home,
Mm-hmm. Our man Dave from Down South Podcast says actually they never had homecoming. It was just Turkey Day. There you go. Because I do know a lot of people that was it. I mean, it was Turkey Day parade and play Tuskegee, and that was it. But yeah, actually, yeah. Down South, it's probably Renaud. What's good? He says I think they only have 2 options for October.
Yep, they do. It's only Jackson State this week or Mississippi Valley next week, which would have, and if you would have done next week, that means you only have the bye week and then Magic City Classic the following week. So
I mean, okay, I get that. When you say that point, okay, but I'm like, if I gotta pick a homecoming opponent, and I got Mississippi Valley or Jackson State, it's a pretty obvious choice that I'm going with Mississippi Valley.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, hey. Dan, you asked this question. I already know my answer. Should the Power 5 programs be nervous to schedule Jackson State? They shouldn't be, because Jackson State ain't gonna schedule them.
No.
Hypothetical.
I still wouldn't be scared.
No.
I think so.
You talking about now PW
the trenches is where the difference is gonna be, bro. They can't handle a Power 5 team in the trenches.
I say in a couple of years that could possibly change.
Yeah, but
it could.
Right now,
no. Right now, no.
And I think it's gonna take more than a couple of years. I think it's gonna take. You're gonna have to, because you can't just rely on transfers, because you need depth. So you're gonna have to get high school guys and transfers, and those high school guys have got to develop. So it's gonna take 3 or 4 years of getting recruits and transfers and developing them before your line is where it needs to be on both sides of the ball.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't know for sure, but I was reading, I saw where they had 2 5-star defensive linemen. They were visiting, I think, either
they're visiting Alabama State for homecoming.
Okay,
and it's like there's 4 top recruits, but they're not visiting for Jackson State. They're visiting for Alabama State.
Alabama State, yep.
Right.
But Carver Montgomery is literally they can walk to Alabama State from there. Not literally, but they're right there.
No, they literally could walk to Alabama State if they want to.
But it's an official visit. That's what makes they're actually doing an official visit. So
yeah.
But I mean, it's gonna take more than just 1 or 2 guys, though, bro. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair.
Yeah. But look, on top of that, fellas, here's another thing you have to take a look at. So obviously, I take a look at fbsschedules.com probably 2-3 times a week or whatever to kind of take a look at some stuff. So recently, I've looked at a bunch of the SEC schedules. I've looked at a bunch of the ACC schedules and a bunch of Big 12 schedules. Few teams in the Big 12 have some openings in the next 2 to 3 years. But the SEC and the ACC, nobody has a non-conference opening until 2027.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, it doesn't look like that scenario is going to happen. And I remember posting that, somebody commented, was like, well, what if they push somebody aside and then be like, Jackson State, come on, which to me, I don't see that happening, because I don't know, let's say Alabama was playing App State. I'm going to just go ahead and just say that or whatever. Mm-hmm. They'll pay App State $1.2 million or whatever to play. If they cancel the schedule on App State, they still got to pay App State $1.2 million and then turn around and pay Jackson anywhere between $5 and $7. I do not see Greg Byrne signing off on that down in Tuscaloosa for that to happen, because if we really look at it, at the end of the day, that's $2 million that they did not have to go ahead and spend. So I really don't see that happening one way or the other. And then I remember, somebody at SEC Media Days asked the Mississippi coaches about facing Jackson State. Same situation with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. They don't have openings until 2026, 2027. So, you're talking about several years down the line. So obviously, I just don't see it happening from the P5 standpoint. Now, Group 5, maybe, but P5, probably not, unless, you get some little changes that happen here or there. Like A&M is going to play Vanderbilt next year only because a team Vanderbilt was supposed to play is changing conferences. So because they're changing conferences, they had to basically lose a non-conference game, and that's how Vanderbilt scooped up A&M for next year. But those things happen, rarely, to be honest with you.
If we're talking about scheduling games, 2027, 2026, will Dion even be at Jackson State? 2027, 2026.
Yeah.
So what's the point of Jackson State of even looking to try to put those games on the schedule if he might not even be there?
Very good question.
I mean, let me ask you guys this, because I know you're saying SEC opponents only. Now, is it possible that they can possibly play any ACC opponents or anything like that? Or you
what
just
I was saying, I looked through the
ACC.
ACC.
He said
schedule.
SEC and ACC.
And ACC. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. My apologies.
The only. So I looked at ACC, SEC, and Big 12. The
Yeah.
Big 12 has a few schools who have some openings, like in 24 and 25. I think TCU was one of those schools, and also Baylor was another school. I really haven't looked at the future Big 12 schools like UCF and BYU and them, but for the most part, majority of the P5 schools that people claim they want to see Jackson State play, that it just ain't happening in the next 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Now, Mo, you brought up something very interesting when you said that. You said Alabama State was playing App State, and they paid them $1.2 million to bring them over. They would have if they cancel that, then they brought in, say, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, or one of those schools. They paid them anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000.
Right.
Why the big gap difference? Because we saw in when LSU brought in Southern, I think it was reported $750,000, something like that. UCLA brought in Alabama State. They flew them across country. Well, I'm not gonna say they flew them. They had to fly across country. But they got paid like $860,000, something like that. But you have App State, Middle Tennessee State, and they got 1.5 to go play Texas A&M and Miami respectively. Why the big difference?
So from what I've understood with the big difference, it's a couple of factors. One of the main factors is the amount of players and staff and personnel that a FCS team will bring compared to a G5 team will bring. So that's definitely one thing you have to kind of look at. And then I'm not saying that there's a rule set in cement that that you have to pay FCS schools or whatever a certain amount, but it's kind of been, since I'm not going to say beginning of the time, but throughout majority of the years that FBS schools will play FCS schools, especially from the P5 range, they're usually only giving them, between 4 and 6, maybe 650. If you're getting more than that, that means you have a good athletic director who is making some things happen. And I've seen that happen a couple of times. As a matter of fact, Tennessee State's going to play Notre Dame next year, and they're going to get like a cool $1 million. But also keep this in mind: Notre Dame's in the independent. Yes, they're on the P5 status, but they're independent, so they don't have to listen to a conference technically to go ahead and do that. But there are also some things I found out on the backside. There's going to be a lot of scholarship fundraising or whatever to go with that $1 million. I think FAMU played either Nebraska or Ohio State several years ago, and they got close to like a cool $1 million or so. So, every once in a while you're going to see that, but usually the regular base price for FBS P5 playing a FCS team is somewhere in that $400,000 to $600,000 range. And like I said, a lot of it kind of goes back to more of the personnel and the travel aspect as well.
Yeah, I think also you gotta look at it from this standpoint. Southern LSU might be an outlier, but for the most part, if you say LSU is bringing in FAMU, well, the amount of people who attend that game won't be the same as if LSU brought in Central Florida. So the amount of money that the school is going to make from that game will be more, than when they play the FCS opponent. So therefore, they'll be willing to pay more for it, than they would for FCS opponent.
Agreed. And let me add this to it too. Remember, television contracts kind of play a part into it as well. Right. So obviously Southern and LSU, they want SEC network. But as Ant just said, if LSU played UCF, that game's probably at least on ESPN2, maybe regular ESPN, just depending on what the week by week stuff is. And then you can have additional financial opportunities for those schools to make money once the TV ratings come out, and then you have the distributions later on as well.
Yeah. Because, I mean, also with those games, you're talking about advertisement and you're talking about different things like that, too. Yeah.
And also think about this for Southern, it literally cost them nothing because
Exactly.
Southern stayed in the same hotel that they will stay in for the regular home games, which is something that's already taken care of prior to the season. All they had to do was just bust it over 10 miles to South Baton Rouge and literally go through the same, progresses and steps and whatnot. And everything was all cool and kosher in that situation.
And I mean, and I know we talked about this before, but I mean, when you're talking about 200,000 people being on LSU's campus, a lot of that money is, being circled in back into the economy also. So, I mean, I think Southern is going to benefit off of that game essentially more, but
I think that's one reason why they probably got 750 because LSU knew that there was that game was going to be packed, and they were going to make the money off of it.
Right.
Agreed. Now, here's something we need to keep an eye out on. Grambling plays at LSU next year. Let's see what the payout for Grambling is going to be. I mean,
well, I don't expect as many people to be there for that game.
I think so too. I think that could play a part into it or whatever. But like I said, the payout, I'm really interested to see or whatever, because remember, you're technically bringing a school 3.5, 4 hours away now, and they've got to get lodging and things of that nature. So I am interested to see what that payout is going to look like next year. We'll probably find out about it somewhere early portion of the summer.
Right. Money. We're talking about money. Dion says that Jackson State won't play in the playoffs, the FCS playoffs. It's outside of the FCS because of money aspects. Something I had to be educated on. Dr. Cavill, I think.
Dr. Cavill, yep.
Cavill. He explained this in a Twitter dialogue we were having about FCS playoffs. I was under the understanding that it was like FBS playoffs, but then I was reminded FBS playoffs is not under the NCAA.
Nope.
So it's completely different. When you make the FBS playoff, you get paid.
Yeah. School
gets paid. I think the conference gets paid, if I'm not mistaken.
They do.
But in FCS, they bid. You actually bid to host the playoff. Correct. And I think it starts at like 50,000 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a school like Notre Dame, North Dakota State, who has built up this athletic budget through their success and also through other means, schools like that, South Dakota, Villanova, those schools can do that and host versus your SWAC schools where you at most you've got these money games that we're playing in the regular season are your entire athletic budget for the year.
Yep.
So
yeah, man, it's one of those Rob Peter, give the Paul type situations. I mean, quite frankly, I'm actually surprised that the NCAA has been able to get away with what they do for the postseason in their playoff structure for so long. As you mentioned, like all the schools like North Dakota State, South Dakota State, the Montana schools, Villanova, Kennesaw State in recent years. I mean, they figured out like how to go ahead and do it. But you think about this too. So for instance, North Dakota State, the Montana schools, those are the state-based schools.
Yeah.
And for people who don't understand that, just think about this. So I'm here in Alabama. In Alabama, no matter if you're in Huntsville, Montgomery, Birmingham, or Mobile, and you work for a TV station, you're covering Alabama and you're covering Auburn or whatever.
Bingo.
Because those are the two big state-run institutions. Well, in Montana and in North Dakota State, that's what Montana State, North Dakota, and North Dakota State are. So all the money that I guess you could say that be flourished into the big programs or what's being done over there. So those schools have been able to work that up for years and years and years. So $50,000 bid for North Dakota State inside the Fargo Dome, oh, that's nothing, nothing at all. But at the same time, you can't say that's the same for some of the HBCUs here or whatever. Now, I'm not saying it's for all, because I know like North Carolina A&T has been able to host, during the 2010 decades a couple of times. I remember Tennessee State did as well. Bethune-Cookman did. But obviously, it's more rare than what it is on a consistent basis with that. Then on top of that, the money you make from ticket sales, concession sales or whatever, parking, I think like 75% of that goes back to the NCAA.
Wow.
That is, it is insanely crazy.
That's a felony in most states, bro.
Facts. Exactly. Exactly. So, you're looking at somewhere between 65 and 75% of the money you make from ticket sales and food sales.
That's extortion, bro.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny when you said these schools have hosted, but it's rarely. I was thinking to myself, they got their income tax back and said, we'll host this year.
They got it. Yeah, they got their stimulus money. They got their PPP loan.
Because here's the other thing too, with the host stuff as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the FCS regular season, for majority of the FCS, not with schools not named Southern and Grambling or Alabama State, ends the week before Thanksgiving. So all of a sudden, you got that Saturday going into Thanksgiving week for the last regular season game. By that Sunday morning, your bids need to be out and literally be making your wire transfers to the NCAA, because at 10 or 11 o'clock that Sunday morning, they are announcing those pairings and who's got home games or whatever. So you got to think like that's a quick turnaround to be like, are we going to spend this amount of money for us to even be in the postseason? Then on top of that, it continues to roll over. So it's not like, you win here and then you get a chance to host just because. Nah, you got to turn around and throw some more money at that. And if you look at like schools like James Madison, who decided, hey, we don't want to do this anymore or whatever, they decided to make their way up to the FBS level because they're like, why keep being successful the way we are, but keep losing money every single year?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. You do make money, but you got to get to like the semifinals.
I was just about, yeah.
So that's a lot, man. And I could see, obviously we see why the SWAC has said, look, we just ain't gonna go ahead and do this or whatever. It's a smart business venture all in all. And, ever since the creation of the Celebration Bowl, individuals like myself, Dr. Cavill, Stephen Gaither from HBCU Game Day, Lute Williams, Tylee Carr, like we've been explaining like this is the reason why, the SWAC and eventually the MEAC decided we don't want to mess with the FCS playoffs anymore as a primary venture when you can make money. And then shout out to Dr. Charles McClellan for making things happen with the SWAC championship game, because if you're a home team, you're going to keep majority of the revenue for hosting the SWAC championship. So let's say that's at least $500,000 or whatever if you get a sellout, and then you get the guaranteed $500,000 from the Celebration Bowl. 2 games, you made a whole $1 million just off of that. So Alcorn and Jackson State, they've easily made $1 million in the Celebration Bowl era because of that.
Yeah. I'm gonna put this comment back up here from Downside Football. It says people don't understand the structure difference between FBS versus FCS, even starting with scholarships.
Yes, sir. 85 to 63.
Bingo. That's every time anybody says, why don't the SWAC just move up to FBS? Why doesn't this HBCU? Because you have to fund 44 additional scholarships immediately. And I know 22 is just for football, but you got to think of Title IX. So you got to have 22 for the women to match that. So you got to have 44 additional scholarships immediately that you have to pay for. And now you don't have to fund all of them, obviously, but you're allowed up to 85. But if you don't fund all 85, then you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball going into the
you pretty much got to have a war chest. You got to be ready.
You got exactly. So how many SWAC schools, how many MEAC schools can afford to do this? And now I understand if you move up to FBS, you'll get the TV money from the contracts, but it's like a chicken and the egg thing. Which one do you need first? Correct. Do you need the money? Do you need the money to be able to fund the scholarships to go up to FBS, or do you fund the scholarship and then recoup the money on the back end? Everybody isn't going to be able to do that. So it's going to take a lot of alumni, a lot of fundraising, and a lot of forward thinking to be able to move from the FCS to the FBS, and everybody isn't there yet.
Nope.
Honestly, I don't think anyone is there yet. If we want to be 100% honest.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, and most of us were at SWAC Media Day, and we heard Dr. McClellan kind of explain, like, here's what it's going to have to take. That's why he said it's going to be about a 8 to 10 year process or whatever. And for the most part, if the SWAC will elevate itself to the FBS level, it ain't happening tomorrow. It ain't happening next year. They're hoping it could be so many whatever years down the line. I mean, I can even go back. Like when I was playing college football in the mid-2000s, App State was an FCS program, and it still took them a long time to get to FBS. Right. So, this
they had a lot of success. Yeah,
exactly, man. With Amani Edwards and those guys, they had a lot of success, but still took them a long time to get to the FBS level. And then on top of that, here's the thing people need to understand too. Going back to that comment, I appreciate that person who came through that. You cannot just jump from the FCS to the FBS on your own. Yep. You need an invite. You cannot do that. Now, back when FAM tried to do it in the early 2000s, the rules were different. You can act back then. You could kind of do it as an independent. You can't do that anymore. Yeah. I think it's because of them and other schools that why you need that invite now or whatever. So let's say Jackson State decides, we want to consider whatever stuff. Unless they're getting an invite from the Sun Belt, which I seriously doubt because they real full. Conference USA, maybe. The MAC, they ain't going nowhere.
Well, first, the MAC, the MAC ain't my bad, but the MAC ain't doing it because they're regional. They're going to maintain their regionality. They don't care about anything else but regionality.
Correct. Because they got that Tuesday and Wednesday night in action,
Yeah. And the Sun Belt, like you said, they just got 4 more teams. They just added teams. And if you look at the Conference USA, they had teams leave Conference USA because the TV deal and the money was so bad. So if you're looking, and I understand anything is better than what some teams have now, but that ain't the league I want to go to because they might not be around in 5 years.
Good. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, man. And then here's the other thing with Conference USA. So, Conference USA lost a bunch of teams, and now they are adding Liberty, Jacksonville State, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston. I was actually on the call for the Conference USA Media Day this past summer, and the commissioner, she basically came out and said that after everything that's happened or whatever, and they just renegotiated their TV deal to go and play or whatever, they're not looking to add anybody anytime soon. So if they didn't get it, this year, it probably ain't happened no time soon, just in general. So, yeah, there are a lot of factors that go on with it, along with the TV situation. A lot of conferences look at adding teams that help their television market as well. Let's go back to the SEC, early 2010s. You add Texas A&M, you get a whole Texas market. You add Missouri, who obviously hasn't done a lot of great things, but guess what? You get the whole state of Missouri, and you get St. Louis.
The Midwest,
plus you get Kansas City, technically, if you want to add those 2 TV markets or whatever in that sense. So, you think about the ad revenue and the dollars and the new eyeballs you have. I even say this, even for the SEC network that was coming aboard or whatever, that was more eyeballs going to different places that you probably weren't paying attention to the SEC football at the time.
Yep. And I mean, if you look who the Big 12 added, they added Cincinnati, they added UCF, the Orlando market, they added Houston. And then they added a big nationwide name in BYU who has, fans all across the country. So that's what they're going for, places like that. And I don't know how you got schools when you got schools in Grambling, when you got schools in small Mississippi towns, Pine Bluff, places like that, you're not going to have many viewers watching these games. So I mean, it's hard to sell that to a TV network.
Yeah. I guess technically this has been answered. Playoff alternatives. I guess is the Celebration Bowl pretty much the playoff alternative?
I want to do a whole HBCU playoff.
HBC like SWAC, MEAC.
The SWAC, and I'm not saying like the structured format, like the FCS.
Yeah.
But if you you already got the Black National Championship, the number 1 in the SWAC versus number 1 in the MEAC. Do number 2 versus number 2, number 3 versus number 3. You know what I'm saying? Let's just And that way,
round robin,
it kind of make it like a bowl game for HBCUs in a sense. You know what I mean?
And I could see that working, but also I could see that as one of those blessings and the curse type situations as well. Coach Nick Saban, very, very famous for saying this when the structure, and I know I'm trying to compare or whatever, but this is the best way to compare it. So near the end of the BCS, Nick Saban said it best. He was like, yes, I like the fact that our guys will get a chance to play an extra bowl game with the semifinals and then the finals going from just the BCS structure. But by adding those additional games, you start to kind of shy away from the importance of the other bowl games. So what you're saying, I do have to wonder, like, okay, let's say you got, Celebration Bowl, and I don't know, let's call it Legacy Bowl for like the runner-up of the both schools or whatever and stuff. I'm not saying the importance wouldn't be there or whatever, but there will have to be a lot of marketing or whatever to make people care, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There literally will be a lot of marketing like to literally make people care in that sense. I mean, do I think it happens with the right teams? Absolutely. But, the structure is all about making the money and the dollars. So, granted, so what you had last year. So, you had Prairie View, who would have been the second place team, but I don't even know who was the second place team in the MEAC last year. I guess I can look that up. Google is my friend.
I mean, you could even kind of do like the top two in both conferences and do like a playoff format or something. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna say this:
to get other teams involved except the top teams in these.
You can't do too many because the MEAC losing football schools like they losing them like kids lose socks.
Yeah, you had to add the SIAC in there too.
You got it,
okay, well, and see, that's where we get in trouble with or whatever.
In the NAIA schools.
Yeah, with those schools. So obviously, because everybody's still under the NCAA structure, you can't have cross-division postseason games.
Yeah.
So, MEAC can't play the CIAA champ or the SWAC champ can't play the SIAC champ or vice versa. And I think one of the best examples to use of that, go back to the Steve McNair days or whatever. Apparently, the Liberty Bowl wanted to get Alcorn State very, very badly, and the NCAA told them, no, we don't allow that or whatever. So, so that didn't end up happening back in 1994.
We should have boo tomato. We should have had that back then.
Nah, I got you, man. But yeah,
that sounds suspicious.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. But here's the thing: you've had nobody challenge it through the years either.
Yeah.
That's why it kind of just stays in place in that sense. So I think right now, for what's going on with the Celebration Bowl, I think it's kind of the best situation. You have to find ways to still elevate it as well and like make some things happen here and there. I think one thing they do have going great right now is the fact that, you do MEAC SWAC Challenge, you begin in Atlanta, you do Celebration Bowl, you in Atlanta. So because you have that, you can kind of celebrate the whole year of HBCU athletics, especially with football. But when you start to get into other things, then, you just got to figure it out all in all. But, as far as, a team like FAMU making the FCS playoff last year, I think that was great, for that. Now let's see what's going to happen moving forward. Can we get other HBCU teams or whatever? I hate to say it, as a consolation prize in the situation, which we also know at the end of the day, there's only so many schools that even fit that bill too.
So I guess the question would be, if you are Jackson State, well, not Jackson State because they don't want to be in the playoff, but if you are a school like FAMU, could you ever see a school declining the Celebration Bowl for a chance at the FCS playoff?
No, you can't, because the SWAC is contractually obligated to go. They can't decline at all. Okay. Now, back in the day when you had the Heritage Bowl, you had that situation happen where you were having some of the MEAC schools decline to go to the FCS playoff, and then teams like Southern and Grambling were playing the second place team in the MEAC, back in the 90s and stuff. You did have that situation, but now you can't decline or whatever, because like I said, that's literally a breach of contract between the member institutions, the SWAC, the Celebration Bowl, and even the NCAA, since the NCAA does allow the SWAC and MEAC to actually play this postseason game.
Gotcha.
It's like a waiver.
Gotcha. Well, we are almost at the end. I got, I think, 2 more or 3 more technically. We talked about Tennessee State briefly. Eddie George, they are 0-4 right now. ironically, they gave Jackson State their closest game so far this season,
Scoreboard wise.
scoreboard wise. Is Eddie George on the hot seat at Tennessee State?
I don't think he's on a hot seat just yet, but that seat could get warm very, very soon. Obviously, they haven't done well as far as from wins and losses standpoint, but they still do have conference play coming up. Now, here's my thing with Tennessee State, though. If they don't do well in conference, let's say, I don't know, they win 2 or 3 games this upcoming year, next year it becomes a really bad scenario because Tennessee State, they've got to play Notre Dame out the gate. We know that's going to be an L. Then they're playing Kennesaw State next year, too, in the non-conference matchup. And then on top of that, the OVC and the Big South have a merger next year to where both of their conferences are merging to basically crown a champion, which means that on top of the teams they're playing in the OVC, they also got to play teams like Bryant, Robert Morris, and Charleston Southern as well, which are usually formidable opponents on the FCS level. So next year, if they don't do well this year and they get to a bad situation next year, I don't know if he makes the end of the year. I want to see him do well, but man, it's a lot of stuff Tennessee State's going to have to do from a competitive standpoint. This year and then possibly next year too.
Yeah, and in the words of my boy G from Swaggin' the Fool, that man is driving standing up because his seat is hot.
I like that.
That boy's seat is hot, man. Like, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying when we were talking about Hugh Jackson and Grambling. They don't look competitive. And I know, Pooh, you said they gave Jackson State the closest game. That was on the scoreboard. Jackson State shot themselves in the foot a lot that game. They were moving the ball up and down the field, bro. And it wasn't a competitive game outside of the scoreboard. So I think they can correct some things, but I don't know how far they can go to where he's not going into next year like a lame duck coach to a certain extent, because they just don't look good, man. And he's been there long enough to where he should have all the kinks worked out by this point.
Right. Yeah. And here's the other crazy thing too. Like, they played Eastern Washington, a top 25 team, very closely the entire game, had a chance to win it really late in the fourth quarter or whatever. Eastern Washington just made a few more plays. So you look at a situation like that, like, oh man, they're taking them down to the wire, but then like these other losses, they've been kind of
like Lane.
Ugly. Yeah. Yeah. Lane was Our guy BJ Jones kind of explained what happened with that one, and when I went back and watched it over the weekend, I was like, okay, he was telling the exact truth.
I couldn't believe it, bro. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. One of our surprise teams was Prairie View. Unfortunately, Prairie View fired their athletic director, Dr. Donald Reed, this past week. I hadn't seen details on it, but I don't know. I'm just leave it at that. I don't know.
Yeah, it came as a big surprise to me as well, because he was like, when he was hired to be the athletic director, like, he came with all the bells and whistles, like, hey, this is going to be the guy that takes us to the next level, whatever the next level is going to be in that situation. But yeah, it was definitely a surprise announcement, at least from people like myself, in which we saw it. But obviously they didn't really put too much out there about it, just in general, especially since Prairie View was like competitive from the SWAC standings as a whole with the Commissioner's Cup, man. Like, they've won several championships under his tenure.
Yep.
I remember when Prairie View hadn't won a game in years, decades.
Yeah, 80 game, what was it? The 80 game losing streak, I think it was.
Yeah, and then they came back and won the SWAC, and it was just like, wow.
Coaching.
Yeah. We do have bad news or sad news. Former WNBA star and Wiley head coach Tiffany Jackson passed away at the age of 37 due to cancer. We'd like to extend our condolences to her family, the team, her community, and everyone affected by this. But may she be remembered in our thoughts and prayers.
That's sad, bro. It was gonna be her first year too, right? If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's sad, bro.
Yeah, they were talking about it on ESPN this morning and a little bit through the afternoon. Obviously, unfortunately, breast cancer got the best of her in this situation, which kind of just goes to show you that, unfortunately, cancer is something everyone has to take seriously, no matter what the scenario is, and no matter how old you are as well. I mean, she was 37, most of us are all in the 30s or whatever. And, we all know somebody that's been impacted just in general. You have to go ahead and, just make sure that if you know anybody that may be possibly ill or facing symptoms or whatever, tell them to go ahead and just get tested, just in general, because you never know how many lives you would save from that. But from her standpoint, let's go ahead and definitely keep her family, her friends, and all her colleagues in prayer. And also, let's definitely keep her team in prayer as well, because basketball season literally starts in a month for them, and now they're going to a season without their coach.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a lot of heavy hearts, bro. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to try to keep basketball the main thing.
Yeah, it's sad that how things like this happen, and it can really affect your team. I think if it was not mistaken, last year, it was a young lady for a softball team. She passed away from suicide, and the softball team just canceled the whole season.
Yeah, so, I remember. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like I said, it's just a sad situation. I hate to hear it. But there will be brighter days. Sun will still rise tomorrow. This too shall pass. And I hate to sound cliche, but yeah. But Mo, I want to say thank you for coming back on with us. Tell everybody where they can find you. Let me bring it up. Tell everybody where they can find you.
All right, on Twitter, you can find me at Mo Carter, Fox 54. On Facebook, you can find me at Mo Carter, WZDX News. Obviously, I post a lot of things HBCU related, especially with Alabama A&M being right here in the backyard. I'll have some previews of Alabama A&M and Grambling State coming up, especially from both head coaches' standpoints, Coach Hugh Jackson and also Coach Connell Maynor. And I'll be at that game this weekend, so I'll have highlights and recaps and all that. And obviously, if for some reason you're not an HBCU fan and you're watching this or whatever, I do cover other conferences as well. You just got to go ahead and just check it out from here, there, and everywhere. But as you see, at Mo Carter, Fox 54 on Twitter, and also at Mo Carter, WZDX News. As a matter of fact, I will be on the set in about 17 minutes. So if you go to fox54.com and hit watch live, you'll see me in action as well.
Yeah. Oh man, I got one last question for you, Mo. So I guess we can leave on a uplifting note. Outside of Dion, best trash talk in the SWAT, coach wise.
I mean, I hate to be a homer, but I hate to say it's Coach Maynor.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
It's Coach Maynor, dude. Like it's. Granted, I haven't been around a lot of the other coaches like talking about, but it's definitely like Coach Maynor for sure, man. And the fact that he does it not only amongst the coaches, he does it to his players as well. But the cool thing is that he can actually back it up as well, because Coach Maynor is one heck of a
I don't need no superpower. I'm in 3 Hall of Fames.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, he's in the MEAC Hall of Fame. He's in the North Carolina A&T Hall of Fame, and also the Arena Football League Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy is an athlete, dude. He really, really is, man. You know,
the most hilarious thing from SWAT Media Day. Our guys at Down South Football were talking with Eddie Robinson Jr., and Coach Maynor was just kind of, you see in the video, he's like in the background, just kind of looking around. And then all of a sudden, he just ran up behind Coach Robinson and said, "See you at Magic City," and walk off.
Yeah, so I mean that's just kind of how it is, man. Just in general, of course. And here's the other thing too. Before that, when Donald Hill-Ely was the head coach at Alabama State, so him and Maynor go back years. So the trash talking between those two was just, unheard of, man. It was pretty crazy. So obviously, it's always just, fun times or whatever. But here's the other thing too. I'm actually kind of looking forward to kind of seeing like what that back and forth is going to look like and kind of be like, because history serves me correctly. In the first Heritage Bowl, Alabama State played North Carolina A&T. Coach Maynor was the starting quarterback for A&T, and Eddie Robinson was the reigning SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. in that contest. So I can't wait to see how they're going to rev that up for like Magic City Classic week in less than a month as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who you got this weekend? I mean, obviously you're gonna pick Alabama A&M. How bad they beating Grambling?
So if Alabama A&M can do what they did this past week, which is basically control the line of scrimmage, because that's literally what they did against Bethune-Cookman. They basically came out and smacked Bethune in the mouth and was like, stop us from the rushing attack or whatever. If they come out and do that, I mean, this could be a 2-3 score game because the defense was doing well. The sad thing was that they could have went up 21-0, and Langford threw an interception that he should have just never even thrown that ball. That gave Bethune momentum going into halftime. They score a touchdown, get a 3-and-out, and then turn around, score again. It's 14-14, and all of a sudden you got a ball game. But I think if they don't throw that interception, go up 21-0, I almost think like you kind of put them away right then and there. So if they find a situation to do that, and especially go with a heavy rushing attack to where they don't have to make Langford be a Quill Glass. I hate to say it like that, but that's really what it's really kind of been. Then it could be a scenario. Now I do wonder how Grambling can combat things or whatever. Do any of you guys know if Washington is going to be back this week for Grambling in the lineup?
I haven't heard that he is playing. Last I heard, he was still kind of questionable.
Okay. I mean, I think if he is able to play, he makes a difference.
Definitely.
Or whatever. But if he doesn't, then obviously I think it's going to be a thing in between the trenches. And also, if Alabama A&M finds ways to basically put Grambling in third and not manageable, it could be a long day for you, Jackson and company as well. Because I looked at these stats for Grambling last week, and their third down percentages were awful. Which is crazy because if you look at the rest of the stats, it was pretty much even with the exception of time of possession. Yeah. So I think A&M can pull one off here or whatever, but history is not on A&M's side because they have not beat Grambling since 2013.
I mean, Grambling hadn't lost in Jackson since 2000. And we saw how that went. So
that's true too.
I think it's gonna be a long weekend for the G-men. I mean, the men.
Dashman. All right, Ram fam. Y'all know what y'all got to do. But Mo, again, it was a pleasure. We'll be back tomorrow night as the Golden Boot preview the Tennessee game this weekend and some of the other top games, but y'all know what it is. Until then, we out.